So, what if a global power could win a war without ever firing a shot? It's a pretty wild thought. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something you could call an invisible army, a huge patient influence campaign that's not about stealing secrets, but about fundamentally changing how the world thinks.
To really wrap your head around this, you have to shift your perspective. There's a great quote from the book Hidden Hand that puts it perfectly. For the Chinese Communist Party, the Cold War never really ended. That ideological struggle against what they call hostile forces, well, it's been a constant, quiet battle. And the number one goal? To make sure the party stays in power at home by neutralizing any and all threats from abroad. Okay, so let's get this straight right away, because it's absolutely crucial. This isn't your classic spy movie stuff, stealing blueprints. On one hand, you have traditional intelligence gathering. Think of agencies like the Ministry of State Security, the MSS, hacking servers. But on the other hand, you've got something way more subtle, influence operations. And this is the world of the United Front Work Department, the UFWD. Their mission isn't to steal data. It's to literally change minds and win friends in very high places. All right, so to really unpack this, we're just going to follow the trail of influence. We'll kick things off with the big picture strategy, then we'll meet the so-called magic weapon that puts it all into action. We'll see how it wins over powerful friends, and then we'll uncover how its reach extends into our own communities. And finally, we'll ask the big question: how in the world do you fight an army you can't see? So let's start with the master plan. The strategy here isn't some big frontal assault on global institutions. No, it's much more like a slow, steady infiltration. It's about working from the inside out, winning over supporters, silencing critics, and piece by piece, reshaping the entire system to be a little more friendly to Beijing. And here's what's so fascinating. This whole global influence campaign, it actually started as a defensive move. The original idea was to build a kind of firewall against ideological infiltration from the outside. So how do you do that? Well, you control the story abroad. You neutralize any threatening ideas before they can ever even get close to your own people. So how is this war actually waged? You need a special kind of organization for this, one that Mao Zedong himself called a magic weapon. And that brings us to the United Front. So the United Front Work Department is this massive, powerful agency inside the Chinese Communist Party. Its job is pretty simple on paper. Manage relationships with literally anyone outside the party. We're talking business leaders, academics, you name it, all to win friends for Beijing and, just as importantly, neutralize its enemies. And this is not some new idea. The concept goes right back to Mao himself. He famously called the United Front one of his 3 magic weapons for winning the revolution. He put it on the exact same level of importance as the party itself and the Red Army. That just shows you how critical this strategy is. Fast forward to today, and that old doctrine has been totally supercharged for the 21st century. Under Xi Jinping, the United Front has been revitalized and massively expanded. Its new task is to build a global network of supporters, all pushing Beijing's agenda on the world stage. So, how does this magic weapon really work in practice? Well, it has one primary tactic that's proven to be incredibly effective. It's all about winning friends in high places through a strategy known as elite capture. Now, the key thing to get here is that the UFWD rarely shows its hand directly. It works through this really sophisticated web of proxies and carefully cultivated friends. The end game is what researchers call elite capture. You build such deep personal relationships with influential foreigners that they start to advocate for Beijing's interests, sometimes without even realizing they're doing it. And this work is done through organizations that look totally harmless, completely benign. We're talking about things like parliamentary friendship groups, or really exclusive business clubs, like the UK's famous 48 Group Club, which is full of high-level politicians and corporate leaders. Even cultural centers can be part of it. They all provide the perfect cover to get access, build trust, and then quietly start to exert influence. There's a well-defined playbook for this. It all kicks off with an invitation, usually an all-expenses-paid trip. Then comes what you could call the cultivation phase. Awards start showing up, impressive titles, exclusive access to top officials. All of this builds a really powerful sense of friendship and, let's be honest, obligation. And that relationship, well, it can be activated later on, whenever Beijing needs a prominent voice to defend its actions or push its narrative on the world stage. But this isn't just happening in the halls of power. This influence has a really long reach that extends right into our universities and local communities, and it affects students and academics in ways that are deeply personal and often pretty intimidating.
So, on college campuses, a key vehicle for this are the Chinese Students and Scholars Associations, or CSSAs. Now, on the surface, a lot of them are great. They just provide social support for students far from home. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll find some that openly state they operate under the guidance of, or are even funded by, the local Chinese embassies and consulates.
And according to some deep dive research from places like Human Rights Watch, this official link can lead to the active monitoring of students. You hear stories from students who are critical of Beijing. They report being harassed, intimidated, knowing that what they do on a campus in, say, America or Australia could be reported back to authorities in China. It just creates this pervasive atmosphere of fear.
This quote right here from a student in Australia just brings it all home. It shows you the terrifyingly personal nature of this pressure. Think about it. A simple social media post from halfway across the world can lead to direct threats, forcing you into silence because you're scared for your family's safety back home. And it is not just students. This climate of fear creates this chilling effect on academic freedom. This professor describes a process of self-censorship where you just learn to avoid certain topics in the classroom. You stop touching on certain subjects, worried you might accidentally say the wrong thing and create serious problems for someone. So you've got this elite capture happening at the very top, and then you have this campus surveillance happening at the grassroots level. To really see how all these different pieces fit together into one coordinated system, it really helps to picture it as a pyramid of influence. Right at the very peak of the pyramid, you have the CCP leadership. They set the ground strategy. Then just below them, you have the UFWD officers. These are the handlers who are on the ground executing that strategy. They work through those mid-level proxies we've been talking about, the friendship groups and the CSSAs. And all of it is aimed at the base of the pyramid, the foreign elites and the students whose opinions they want to shape.
So, if this whole complex system thrives on ambiguity and it operates best in the shadows, what's the most effective way for an open society to respond? The authors of Hidden Hand really put it perfectly. The consensus among researchers is these kinds of operations have one huge weakness: exposure. Because they depend on secrecy, simply dragging their activities out into the daylight is the single most powerful first step you can take to neutralize them. So, the most important takeaway here is that you don't fight secrecy with more secrecy. The best defense is to double down on the core strengths of a democracy. You empower investigative journalists, you support academic research, you encourage public debate, and you demand transparency from your leaders. These are the tools that protect the very freedoms we value. And really, this leaves us with this central challenge of our time. In an era of covert, subtle influence, the real question isn't just how do we defend ourselves, but how do we do it without undermining the principles of openness, free speech, and academic freedom that these campaigns are designed to exploit in the first place.